He landed in London at 3:04 a.m. No motorcade, no red carpet, no royal wave from the balcony. Just Prince Harry, a lone figure cloaked in fog and desperation, stepping onto the tarmac of Heathrow with the weight of a kingdom and a crumbling legacy pressing down on his shoulders. The plane door hadn't even fully opened before the cameras started flashing. Paparazzi, airport staff, a few stunned bystanders. Everyone knew something was off. This wasn't a state visit. It wasn't a quiet family reunion. It was something else. Something urgent. Something desperate. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. But the question echoed louder than the shutter clicks. Why now? Why had Prince Harry, who once declared the UK toxic and sworn never to return without adequate security, suddenly flown in on a commercial red-eye, under the radar and alone? The answer, it seems, lay buried not just in royal politics, but in a silent war that had been building behind palace walls for months. A war that had nothing to do with crowns or duty and everything to do with timing. Because hours before Harry landed, a date had been locked. A date that shocked the monarchy. A date that changed everything. Prince William's coronation had just been confirmed. And Harry knew what that meant. Not just a shift in power, but a threat. An ultimatum. A message. Because alongside the coronation date came a terrifying clause from deep within the royal archives. One that hadn't been invoked in over a century. A clause that allowed the senior heir to restructure titles. All titles, including his brothers. Prince Harry was here for one reason. To beg them not to strip him. But would anyone even open the palace gates? Let's rewind a moment. Because this wasn't just another royal spat. This was a culmination of decades of resentment, betrayal, ambition, and power plays. And it all spiraled into motion with one hushed announcement from the palace. Prince William's coronation will take place in June. Not years away. Not upon the death of King Charles. But soon. And intentionally timed, insiders say, to coincide with the 10th anniversary of a very different royal moment. The 2016 Invictus Games. The very initiative that once made Harry a global darling. A coincidence? Not likely. You see, while King Charles remained monarch in name, whispers within the palace suggested William was preparing to take on a role far more active than expected. A co-regency. A transitional crown. Whatever you want to call it. The message was clear. William was stepping up. And Harry? He was being pushed out. Which is why, back in Montecito, a storm was brewing. Sources say Harry had been pacing for days. Meghan, icy with fury, reportedly warned him, let them strip it. It means nothing in America. But it did mean something to Harry. Not just to his ego, but to his identity. To his mother's legacy. To his children. Because the ripple effect of losing Prince wouldn't stop with him. Archie, Lilibet, the entire Sussex line, erased from history? Reduced to celebrity footnotes instead of royal figures? Harry couldn't let that happen. So he boarded that plane. Alone. Now here's where it gets even stranger. When he arrived, no official escort was waiting. Not even a courtesy car from Clarence House. The only vehicle on standby was a black SUV, hired by Harry's private team just hours before the flight. The driver, according to leaks, had been told to stay parked until contacted. Harry, face drawn and lips pressed, reportedly ignored every call from Meghan during that ride. And when his aide gently asked, "Sir, should I contact your father's office?" Harry's reply was chillingly quiet. No, he won't pick up. Because by then, Harry knew the truth. Charles had already stepped aside. He wasn't the one pulling the strings anymore. So who was? Now let's dig deeper, because this isn't just about hurt feelings or sibling rivalry. This was a chess move years in the making. And William? He was playing to win. You see, ever since the Queen passed, William had been consolidating quiet power, taking meetings, replacing key aides, aligning with courtiers who had once served his grandmother. Behind that charming smile and calm demeanor was a prince preparing for war, and not just with his enemies abroad, but with the rebellion in his own family. He had waited, observed, stayed silent through Oprah, through Spare, through Spotify, Netflix, all of it. But now, with the coronation clock ticking, he made his first real strike. A legal document was dusted off, reviewed by palace lawyers, approved in silence, and finally, slipped into the protocol schedule. The Royal Reassessment Clause of 1917. Never heard of it. That's because no one talks about it. Buried deep in royal legislation, it allows the heir apparent, under specific conditions, to petition for the removal or reclassification of titles to ensure dignity and alignment with crown interests. Basically, William could now remove Harry's titles. Not through Parliament, not through the king, through procedure. And Harry knew it. So when he landed, he wasn't coming home. He was entering enemy territory. But here's the twist. Just 48 hours before that flight, Harry had received an anonymous email. Encrypted, untraceable, from a known former royal aide who had since vanished from public life. The message read simply, "They've set the date. Your titles are on the table. You have less than 72 hours. That was all it took. He left Montecito that same evening. And now, as the morning fog settled over Windsor, Harry sat alone in a temporary rental apartment arranged last minute by his team. No Frogmore. No family. The question is, who would he reach out to first? Would he try to call Charles? Send a message to William? Speak to, and, the so-called royal peacemaker? None of them responded to his first wave of messages. And then, the press got wind. Prince Harry returns to UK. Private visit or emergency meeting. Coronation date confirmed. Sources say William set to strip Harry's titles. The headlines exploded, and within hours, the hashtag Prince Plead began trending. It was cruel, mocking, but viral. Memes of Harry in kneeling poses. Edits of him holding signs saying, "Please don't strip me." It wasn't just an internal crisis now. It was public humiliation. And Meghan? She was silent. No statements. No Instagram stories. Nothing. Because as much as this was Harry's battle, it was also a PR time bomb for her. Because here's the brutal truth no one wants to say out loud. For all the "we left to be free" rhetoric, the Sussex brand still relied heavily on titles, on royal adjacency. Without them, the sparkle dims. The access fades. The deals? They become much harder to renew. So this wasn't just a symbolic move. It was a financial threat. And Harry knew that. So did William. But just when it looked like all doors were closing, a message arrived. Handwritten. Delivered by a palace courier, but unsigned. It read, "If you wish to speak to your brother, come alone. No aides. No press. No phones. St. James's Chapel. Tonight. Midnight." Harry stared at the note. Pale. Shaking. And when his aide asked, "Sir, what will you do?" Harry simply said, "I've come too far to turn back now." But what happened that night inside the chapel, what was said, what was threatened, and what was ultimately decided, would shake the monarchy to its core. And it was only just beginning. What kind of brother summons you at midnight, to a chapel, and insists you come alone? That was the question pounding in Harry's head as the black cab rolled through empty London streets, the city eerily quiet, as if holding its breath. Midnight meetings were never good news in the royal world. They meant secrets. They meant damage control. They meant decisions that couldn't survive daylight. And this one felt final. St. James's Chapel loomed ahead, its stone walls washed in amber light, guards posted at a discreet distance. No press, no aides, no leaks. At least not yet. Harry stepped out of the car, coat pulled tight, heart racing. For the first time in years, he wasn't arriving as a prince with protection. He was arriving as a problem. Inside, the air was cold, ancient, heavy with centuries of whispered confessions and broken vows. And there he was, Prince William, not in uniform, not smiling. Just standing near the altar, hands clasped behind his back, face unreadable. The future king looked older than Harry remembered. Sharper, harder, a man who had waited long enough to stop pretending. "So," William said, voice low, echoing off the stone. "You came. What do you say to your brother when you know he might be about to erase you from history?" Harry tried to joke, tried to deflect. "Old habits. You always did like dramatic settings." William didn't smile. That's when Harry knew. This wasn't a reconciliation. This was a reckoning. Let's rewind for a second, because what led to this moment didn't start tonight. It started days earlier, with a message that was never meant to be seen. The midnight message. Sources say it was drafted, deleted, rewritten, and finally sent in a moment of pure panic. Harry, back in Montecito, staring at his phone, watching reports roll in about the coronation date, the secret council meetings, the legal reviews. He knew what was coming. And for the first time since leaving the UK, he wasn't angry. He was scared. So he typed. And what he typed wasn't defiant. It wasn't accusatory. It was raw. An email. Direct. No PR team. No filters. To William. The subject line alone said everything. We need to talk. Now. Inside, Harry allegedly poured out something he hadn't said out loud in years. That he felt cornered. That he felt the ground shifting under his feet. That he never meant for things to go this far. That whatever William thought, he wasn't trying to destroy the monarchy. And then came the line that stunned aides when it leaked hours later. I'm still your brother. Please don't do this. Please don't do this. Not stop this. Not reconsider. Don't do this. Harry already believed the decision had been made. Here's where it gets messy. Because within hours of that message being sent, select details appeared in the press. Not the whole thing. Just enough to make Harry look weak. Desperate. Begging. How did it leak? That's the question that lit a firestorm inside the palace. William was furious. Not because the email existed, but because it made him look like the villain before he'd even acted. Insiders say he immediately summoned senior aides and demanded to know who had access to his private correspondence. And then he did something unexpected. He didn't deny it. No rebuttal. No clarification. No family matters remain private statement. Silence. A calculated silence. Because in royal warfare, silence is power. Harry, meanwhile, was watching the fallout from California. Headlines twisted his words. Commentators mocked his tone. Social media exploded with accusations, hypocrisy, entitlement, manipulation. And Meghan? She saw it differently. Sources close to her say she was livid, not at the palace, but at Harry. You handed them the narrative, she allegedly snapped. You gave them exactly what they wanted. And she wasn't wrong. For years, the Sussex strategy had been strength through exposure. Tell your story first. Control the narrative. But this email? This wasn't a story. It was a plea. And please don't play well in the court of public opinion, especially when the other side doesn't respond. William didn't reply to the email. Not immediately. Instead, he forwarded it. Straight to the legal team. That's when the clause was officially activated. The Royal Reassessment Clause. The mechanism that allowed William, as heir apparent and acting head of several royal trusts, to initiate a review of titles held by non-working royals whose actions were deemed inconsistent with crown interests. Notice the wording. Inconsistent. Not illegal. Not treasonous. Just inconvenient. Harry checked every box. Commercial deals. Public criticism. Political commentary. Foreign media alliances. Ongoing litigation against the UK government. On paper, it was an open and shut case. But William hesitated. Why? Because this wasn't just policy. This was personal. For all the frost, for all the years of tension, this was still his brother. The boy who walked behind their mother's coffin. The one he once swore to protect. And that's where the contradiction tore him in half. William the man didn't want to do it. William the future king believed he had no choice. So he delayed. Just enough. And in that delay, Harry flew to London. Back in the chapel, the tension was unbearable. You leaked it, Harry said suddenly, breaking the silence. Didn't you? William turned slowly. You sent it. That's not an answer. William's jaw tightened. You wanted me to see how desperate you were. Congratulations. I saw it. That cut deep. Harry stepped closer. I wanted you to remember I'm human. That I'm not just a problem for your advisors to solve. And I wanted you, William shot back, voice rising, to remember that your actions don't just affect you. They affect the crown. They affect my children. They affect the future I'm responsible for. There it was. The line in the sand. This wasn't about the past. It was about what came next. Harry's voice dropped. So you're really going to do it? William didn't answer immediately. He walked toward the pews, ran a hand along the worn wood. A king in waiting, grounding himself in tradition. I asked you here, he finally said, because this is your last chance to hear it from me. Not through lawyers. Not through the press. Harry's heart pounded. Hear what? That the review is already underway. The words hit like a physical blow. So this is just a courtesy meeting? Harry asked bitterly. You strip me, then invite me to pray about it. William turned, eyes blazing. You stripped yourself the moment you decided the rules didn't apply to you. Silence again. Then Harry did something no one expected. He apologized. Not for leaving. not for speaking out, but for one specific thing. "I should never have let it get to this point," he said quietly. "I should have picked up the phone sooner." William faltered, just for a second. That hesitation, that crack, that's what kept this from ending right there. Because in that moment, William realized something terrifying. Harry wasn't fighting anymore. He was surrendering, and surrender is dangerous. It shifts the power dynamic. It makes the aggressor look cruel. William knew if he pushed too hard now, the optics would be disastrous. So he changed tactics. "There may be conditions," he said carefully. Harry looked up, hope flickering. "Conditions? Adjustments," William corrected. "Reclassifications. Not a total removal. Titles downgraded. Styles altered. HRH usage restricted. A compromise. But it would come at a cost." "Public silence," William said. "No more interviews. No more books. No more commentary about the family." Harry swallowed. That was his voice. His leverage. "And Meghan?" he asked. William didn't hesitate. "Especially Meghan." That was the breaking point. Harry laughed, a hollow sound. "You're asking me to choose. I'm telling you there are consequences either way." The brothers stared at each other, the weight of generations pressing down. Then William delivered the line that changed everything. "The coronation date is locked," he said, "and the announcement goes out in 48 hours. With or without you." 48 hours. Harry realized then why this meeting was happening now. This wasn't negotiation. It was notification. And as Harry turned to leave the chapel, his phone vibrated for the first time that night. A message from an unknown number. 3 words. "She knows everything." Harry froze. Because if that message meant what he thought it meant, then this wasn't just about titles anymore. It was about secrets that could burn the monarchy to the ground. And the person holding them had just entered the game. Who was she? And what exactly did she know? Harry stared at the message, his breath fogging the cold chapel air. His hand trembled slightly as he read the text again. "She knows everything." No name, no context. Just that, like a match struck in the dark, hinting at a firestorm yet to come. Was it about Meghan? About the coronation? Or worse? Had someone finally uncovered that buried clause he and Meghan had tried desperately to keep sealed in California's legal system? One thing was clear. This wasn't just about titles anymore. This was about leverage. And someone, some woman, now held a card so powerful, it could shift the entire royal chessboard. But let's rewind again. Because to understand the storm that was brewing, we need to look at the real trigger behind all this chaos. The clause. The clause that William activated without blinking. The clause Harry never believed would be used against him. Because it hadn't been used against anyone in over 100 years. Let's go back to when it was first written. Year, 1917. King George V. Britain was at war. Anti-German sentiment was exploding. The monarchy was in a tight spot. Too many royal titles floating around with suspiciously Germanic names. Something had to be done. So King George V issued the letters patent, redefining who could use the title of prince or princess, and under what conditions. That's when the infamous streamlining clause came into play, a power that gave future heirs a way to reclaim control over who could officially claim royal blood and who couldn't. It was meant to be a safeguard, but in William's hands, it had become a weapon, a quiet, bureaucratic guillotine. With one stroke, Harry could lose everything. Not just his royal highness, he'd already given that up, but even the prince title itself. Gone. Just Mr. Henry Charles Albert David Windsor. And the children? Archie and Lilibet would be next. Because if Harry lost his status, their inherited right to titles under the 1917 letters patent evaporated. It was a domino effect, one the palace had been carefully timing. Now here's the kicker. Why now? Why trigger it right before William's coronation? Because William understood something that Harry never truly grasped. Power isn't declared. It's displayed. And stripping Harry's titles, in full public view, would be the ultimate display of control. But there was one obstacle. A paper trail. Because deep inside the dusty archives of the Crown Estate, sealed in a red folder marked Confidential, Lineage Matters, was a little-known amendment. Signed not by King George, but Queen Elizabeth II. The amendment had been quietly added in 2018, just before Harry and Meghan's wedding. It granted limited protection to certain titles, but only under 2 conditions. The title holder must not engage in public criticism of the monarchy, The title holder must not enter into financial agreements that leverage royal association. Harry had violated both, and William's legal team had the receipts. Netflix, Spotify, Oprah, the memoir, the podcast, the fictionalized series still in pre-production. All of it in writing. The clause could now be lawfully executed. But back to that message. Because that anonymous text, "She knows everything," hinted at a looming problem. Someone had uncovered a counter clause. One, Meghan herself, had allegedly insisted be added to their Sussex exit agreement. Buried within a private agreement signed in early 2020, it included a rarely used privacy condition, a legal stipulation that in exchange for their agreement to step back from royal duties, certain communications, emails, and internal memos would never be used against them in future proceedings. This clause was Meghan's insurance policy. And according to sources, someone had just found it. So who was she? Not Meghan. Not Anne. The name that kept surfacing in whispers? Lady Victoria Caraway, a former aide to Queen Elizabeth, once described as the vault of the crown. A woman who had served under 3 monarchs and retired with full honors in 2022, shortly after Elizabeth's passing. No one heard from her after that. Until now. Reports indicate that Lady Caraway had recently visited a law firm in Knightsbridge, a firm with a long history of representing embattled aristocrats and whistleblowers. She wasn't seen leaving, but her arrival was logged in their security database. And within 12 hours of that visit, Harry got the message. She knows everything. Harry's face turned pale in the candlelight of the chapel. He didn't tell William about the message. Not yet. Instead, he said something simple. "I'm not leaving." William blinked. "What?" "I'm not going back to California until this is resolved." William scoffed. "You think camping in London is going to change royal law?" Harry stepped closer. "I think something's about to blow up. And when it does, you'll want me here." That wasn't bravado. It was a warning. Because if Caraway was about to go public, with documents, with emails, with proof that the Sussexes had been smeared internally before even stepping down, then the narrative would implode. And with William's coronation on the horizon, timing was everything. So Harry made his next move. He called the only royal who had never chosen a side, Princess Beatrice, an unexpected ally. Beatrice had stayed relatively silent throughout the Sussex drama. Loyal to the crown, yes, but also quietly sympathetic to Harry. After all, she knew what it was like to be sidelined, to be the spare among the spares. Harry asked for a meeting. Beatrice agreed. The location? A discreet garden suite at the Goring Hotel. The very place Kate had stayed the night before her wedding. Symbolic? Possibly. But what happened in that meeting changed the game. Because Beatrice revealed something Harry didn't know. Lady Caraway wasn't acting alone. She was working with someone else. Someone still inside the palace. And that insider had access to internal Crown Estate communications, the very memos Meghan believed had been erased. "You need to be careful," Beatrice warned. "If those come out, it won't just damage William. It'll burn the whole institution." Harry didn't flinch. Maybe it needs to burn. The room fell silent. Because for the first time, Harry wasn't just defending himself. He was threatening the monarchy. But that wasn't the most shocking part of their meeting. Beatrice handed him an envelope. No return address. Sealed in wax. It was a letter. From Lady Victoria Caraway herself. Inside was a single sentence. "The truth has no allegiance. If they move to destroy you, I will release what I have." Harry folded the letter slowly. Quietly. Because now he had something William didn't expect. Time. For once, Harry was no longer chasing the story. He was the story. But what happened next would blindside them all. Because 24 hours later, just as the palace prepared to issue the first official statement on the Sussex title review, an email was leaked to the press. An email dated February 2020. From a senior royal aide to the communications team. Subject line: "Neutralize the California problem before the summer tour." And the first sentence? "We need to coordinate subtle leaks to discredit them before they rebrand their image." And it was signed with initials, Cam. That changed everything. Because those initials? They belonged to someone no one expected to be involved. And when Meghan saw the headline, her reaction was immediate. She made one phone call. To her lawyer. It's time. But what that meant, and what she was about to do, would send shockwaves through every royal office across the Commonwealth. What do you do when the narrative flips overnight, and suddenly you're no longer the one begging. You seize the moment. That's exactly what Meghan did the second she saw the headline flash across her phone. The leaked email, the subject line, the initials, the implication that everything she and Harry had claimed for years might finally have proof behind it. It's time. Those two words weren't said in anger. They weren't screamed. They were calm, calculated, final. Because if there was one thing Meghan Markle understood better than anyone inside those palace walls, it was timing. And this, right now, was the crack in the dam. But let's be clear about something before we go any further. Meghan didn't panic. She pivoted. While Harry was still in London, pacing between secret meetings and midnight confrontations, Meghan was already 3 moves ahead. Her phone calls that morning weren't emotional check-ins. They were instructions. First call, her legal counsel in Los Angeles. Second call, a crisis PR strategist she hadn't used since the Oprah interview. Third call, someone far more unexpected. A former Palace Communications insider who had quietly relocated to Canada 2 years earlier. And the message Meghan delivered was blunt. They've exposed themselves. Now we decide how much the world sees. Here's the contradiction that stunned even her allies. Publicly, Meghan said nothing. No statement. No tweet. No carefully worded denial or affirmation. Silence. But behind the scenes, it was anything but quiet. Because that leaked email, especially the phrase, neutralize the California problem, was nuclear. It suggested intent, strategy, coordination, the very thing the palace had always denied. And the timing? Catastrophic. William's coronation announcement was scheduled within days. Sponsors were lining up. International leaders were preparing statements. The monarchy was trying to project stability. Instead, they were staring down a credibility crisis. And Meghan knew it. Sources say she sat at her kitchen table in Montecito, laptop open, tea untouched, reading every analysis, every pundit reaction. She wasn't celebrating. She was assessing. Because there was a risk. If she went too hard, too fast, the palace would close ranks. Discredit the source. Question authenticity. Paint her as vindictive. But if she waited too long, the story could be buried. So she issued an ultimatum. Not to the palace. To Harry. You don't beg anymore, she told him in a tense phone call that lasted nearly an hour. If you go back into that chapel apologizing, you lose everything. Including me. That line hit harder than any legal threat. Because here's the truth Harry was struggling with. He wanted peace. Meghan wanted justice. And those two goals were no longer aligned. Harry argued. He said escalation would hurt the kids, that it would drag things out, that maybe a compromise could still be reached. Meghan's response was cold. A compromise with people who plan to destroy us? Silence. Then she said the thing Harry hadn't expected. They never intended to let us go. That stopped him. Because buried beneath the anger and exhaustion was a realization Harry was only just beginning to accept. The Sussex exit was never meant to succeed. It was meant to fail quietly, to fizzle, to turn them into cautionary tales. And now, the proof might exist. Which brings us back to Lady Victoria Carraway, the woman behind the curtain. Her letter wasn't a bluff. It was a warning, and the palace knew it. Within hours of the leaked email going viral, emergency meetings were called. Legal teams scrambled to trace the source. IT departments were instructed to audit old servers that were supposed to have been wiped. That alone told Meghan everything she needed to know. If the palace was nervous, it meant the documents were real. Meanwhile, Harry received another message. This time not anonymous. A missed call. No voicemail. Caller ID, Clarence House. King Charles. The first direct contact since Harry landed. Harry stared at the screen, heart pounding. This was it. The call he'd been waiting for. The chance to speak father to son, not king to subject. He called back. Straight to voicemail. And that voicemail message? It said everything without saying anything at all. This line is not monitored. Not monitored. Translation, this is no longer personal. That's when Meghan made her most controversial move yet. She authorized a controlled leak. Not of the full email trail. Not yet. Just enough. A single additional excerpt, quietly passed to a respected investigative journalist. One known for careful sourcing. One the palace couldn't easily dismiss as tabloid trash. The excerpt included a line even more damning than the subject header. If we allow them to monetize the brand uncontested, We risk permanent dilution of crown authority. Permanent dilution. That phrase set off alarms everywhere, because it reframed the Sussex fallout not as a family feud, but as a corporate power struggle. The monarchy wasn't just offended. It felt threatened. And Meghan knew that framing would resonate, especially in America. Public opinion began to shift, slowly at first, then faster. Commentators who had once mocked Harry's victim narrative began to pause, reconsider, ask new questions. Why would the palace coordinate leaks? Why now? And why was this all happening just as William's coronation date was announced? Which brings us to William's response. Or rather, his lack of one. He said nothing publicly. Again, but privately. Sources say he was incandescent. Because for the first time, he wasn't in control of the narrative. And worse, someone inside the palace had betrayed him. The internal hunt began. Staff were questioned. Access logs reviewed. Old grudges resurfaced. Trust eroded. And that's when William realized the most dangerous thing of all. This wasn't an attack from outside. It was coming from within. Meanwhile, Harry was unraveling. Torn between Meghan's strategy and his own instinct to de-escalate, he found himself increasingly isolated. The palace saw him as a liability. Meghan saw him as hesitant. The press saw him as cornered. And yet, the public began to sympathize. Not with his choices, but with his position. The spare who never stood a chance. The brother who was always one step behind. The man now fighting to keep his name. That sympathy scared the palace more than any document. Because sympathy is unpredictable. And then came the ultimatum from William's side, delivered through intermediaries. No direct call. Any further releases will result in immediate execution of the title reassessment. No compromise. No delay. Meghan laughed when she heard that. They're bluffing, she said. And if they're not, then we expose everything. Everything. That word hung in the air. Because everything didn't just mean emails. It meant conversations. Meetings. Internal strategies discussed long before Oprah. Before Spare. Before Netflix. It meant revealing that the Sussexes weren't rebels. They were targets. Harry felt sick. This was no longer about saving his titles. It was about burning bridges he might never rebuild. But Meghan was resolute. They started this, she said. We finish it. And just when it seemed like the lines were drawn and war was inevitable, another message arrived. This one from an unexpected source. Princess Anne. Short. Direct. Unmistakably her. Stop. All of you. Before you destroy something that cannot be rebuilt. Anne was stepping in. And when Anne steps in, things change. Because she wasn't emotional. She wasn't political. She was ruthless in her loyalty to the institution. And she wanted a meeting. With Harry. Alone. No Meghan. No William. Just the two of them. The location? Buckingham Palace. In the same room where the Queen had once warned Harry that the crown always survives, but not everyone does. Harry agreed. But as he walked toward that meeting, phone buzzing nonstop, one thought kept circling his mind. What if Meghan was right? What if this was the moment to stop running and start fighting back? Because depending on what Anne said next, the monarchy might be facing its most dangerous internal fracture in modern history. What do you say to the one royal who's always said nothing and meant everything? That was the question racing through Harry's head as he stepped into Buckingham Palace for the first time in over a year. No red carpet. No fanfare. Just a hushed security escort and a single instruction. The Princess Royal is waiting. Princess Anne. The iron-willed, no-nonsense, war-hardened daughter of Queen Elizabeth. The woman who never needed headlines to make waves. She didn't do drama. She didn't play press games. And she absolutely didn't tolerate weakness. So why was she the one calling this meeting now? Harry didn't know. But he was about to find out. The room they chose wasn't grand. It wasn't the throne room or the white drawing room. It was an old study, small, lined with books, smelling faintly of leather and lavender polish. A space where Queen Elizabeth used to review her red boxes late into the night, and stood by the fireplace, arms crossed. Not angry, not warm. Just observant. You look tired, she said, not as an insult, but as a diagnosis. Harry shrugged. It's been a long week. And nodded slowly, then cut straight to it. You're about to set fire to everything. No preamble. No pleasantries. Harry blinked. Am I the one holding the matches? And gave a look. The kind that could slice through steel. You think you're the only one bleeding here, she said. You're not. But you're the only one dragging the family through a public execution. Harry stepped forward, defensive. This isn't about revenge. It's about truth. About survival. No, and said. It's about ego. Yours. William's. Even Meghan's. Everyone's forgotten the crown is bigger than all of you. There was silence. Then Harry said what had been burning in his chest for weeks. I'm tired of protecting something that never protected me. And didn't flinch. You think that makes you special? Her voice didn't rise. It dropped, low, sharp, surgical. We were all unprotected, Harry. Me. Your father. Even your mother. That last word landed like a slap. And never talked about Diana. Never. Harry's face changed. His voice dropped. You don't get to talk about her. Oh, I think I do. And said, eyes narrowing. Because I was there when she tried to leave. I was there when the institution chewed her up. And I was there when she made her own decisions. Harry stepped back, stunned, and took a breath. Her tone softened, barely. She was brilliant. But she also knew the rules. And she broke them anyway. Sometimes to survive. Sometimes to get revenge. And it cost her. Just like it's costing you. Harry's fists clenched. This is different. Is it? And challenged. Or are you just rewriting history with yourself as the victim? The room fell silent. Then, and walked to a desk. Pulled out a folder. Handed it to him. Inside, a printed memo. Stamped. Dated. Confidential. It was from early 2020. A briefing prepared by a senior royal aide. The subject? Projected fallout from Sussex departure. Harry's eyes scanned the first few lines. And froze. Because it didn't read like a plan to support their independence. It read like a strategy to contain and isolate them. Neutralize associations. Downplay achievements. Limit public visibility. And watched his face. You think we didn't know? She said quietly. We knew what was being said. We knew how they were framing you. Harry looked up. And you let it happen? And didn't blink. No. We couldn't stop it. That's the difference. She sat down. This family doesn't run itself anymore. You know that. It hasn't for decades. It's a machine. And once it decides something, or someone, is a liability. She trailed off. She didn't have to finish. Harry understood. And now, she continued, you're about to give them the very excuse they need to bury you permanently. He frowned. You think exposing the truth is a mistake? I think timing is everything, and said. And right now, you're about to walk into a trap. Harry looked down at the memo again, then asked the question no one had dared say aloud. Did William know? And paused. Her silence was answer enough. And that was the moment Harry realized the full scale of the betrayal. It wasn't just the aides, or the institution. It was his own blood. But then came the twist. And leaned in. There's something you don't know, she said. Something William's been keeping from you. Harry's heart raced. What? He never wanted the clause activated, she said. Not at first. It was pushed. By who? Anne's face was unreadable. Camilla. Silence. Long heavy. Harry blinked. What? She's been building her own alliances, and said. Quietly. Effectively. Ever since the Queen passed. Harry couldn't believe it. Camilla? Behind the title stripping? She convinced Charles it would protect the crown, and explained. That if you weren't cut off cleanly, your chaos would bleed into William's reign. And William agreed. Eventually, and said. After you sent the email. Harry felt sick. He had triggered the very response he feared. But, and wasn't finished. She's the one who told Charles to stay out of it. Said it was a matter for the heir. Not the king. Harry sat down, reeling. So this is all her game? And looked at him. No. This is your game now. Harry looked up. And she handed him something else. A flash drive. What is this? Evidence, she said. From Caraway. Harry's hands trembled. Why are you giving this to me? And stood. Because I don't believe in kings and pawns. I believe in consequences. And if this goes public, you better be ready for what comes next. Then she left. Just like that. Leaving Harry alone. With the drive. With the memo. With the unbearable knowledge that his family wasn't just fractured, it was rigged. And that Camilla, the woman once labeled an outsider, might now be the most powerful strategist in the royal circle. But as Harry stared at that drive, another message came through. This time from Meghan. One word. Release. Harry didn't respond. Because what was on that drive could bring down the House of Windsor. What exactly was on that drive? That was the question echoing in Harry's mind as he sat frozen in the study, the USB clutched in his palm like a live grenade, and hadn't said much. But her eyes had said everything. This wasn't just some archive of gossip or speculation. It was evidence. Hard, traceable, undeniable. And if Lady Victoria Carraway had truly compiled what Harry suspected, private memos, emails, correspondence, maybe even recordings, then this wasn't just a tool. It was a weapon, the kind that could shatter reputations, dismantle trust, and rewrite the narrative of the last 4 years. But the question wasn't what to do with it. It was when. Because with the coronation date officially locked and the palace preparing to roll out its most pristine PR campaign since Queen Elizabeth's Jubilee, the stakes had never been higher. William's image was being scrubbed to perfection. Every photo, every word, every invite. It was all about presenting a future king ready to lead. The world was watching. And that's what made the next move even more dangerous. Because Harry wasn't the only one holding cards anymore. Back in Montecito, Meghan was already several steps ahead. When Harry failed to respond to her release message, she didn't wait. She called a meeting. A private, off-the-record roundtable with her top PR advisor, her legal counsel, and an unlikely guest. A journalist from the New York Times who had been quietly embedded in royal reporting for over a decade. This wasn't an on-the-record interview. It was a temperature check. "What happens?" Meghan asked, calm and deliberate. "If we prove the palace actively tried to sabotage us before we stepped back?" The journalist didn't hesitate. "You don't just win the PR war," he said. "You expose the monarchy's biggest internal scandal since Diana." That was all she needed to hear. She didn't ask Harry's permission. She moved forward. But what she didn't know was that someone else was already moving inside the palace. Because while Harry had been sitting with Anne and Meghan was coordinating her next PR strike, Camilla was busy doing what she did best, controlling the narrative before it even reached the public. In a quiet corner of Clarence House, Camilla summoned her most trusted press liaison. "I want every file on Carraway," she said. "Full audit." Now, she didn't trust Anne. She didn't trust Harry. And she definitely didn't trust what might be sitting on that flash drive. Because Camilla had long suspected Carraway of keeping off-the-record backups. Letters, notes, the Queen's private margin scribbles, even possible transcripts of meetings from the fateful Sandringham summit in 2020, the meeting that determined Harry and Meghan's exit terms. Camilla wasn't about to be blindsided. She moved quickly. Within 12 hours, 2 former aides of Carraway were quietly interviewed. Their responses were vague. One said Carraway had warned her that the monarchy would eat itself from within. The other said Carraway believed Harry had been cut off long before he ever left. That was enough for Camilla to panic. She sent a private message to William, encrypted and routed through an internal royal channel. 3 words. "It's happening now." Back in London, Harry stared at the flash drive like it was a snake curled in his hand. He wanted to look. Every instinct screamed at him to plug it in. But something stopped him. A memory of the night Diana's infamous Panorama interview aired. He was a boy, tucked in bed, but he remembered the way the palace had gone into lockdown. The staff whispering, the cold fury on Charles's face, the sickening silence. He remembered how his mother had spoken her truth, and how the world had devoured her. Would this be any different? And what would it mean for William? For Charles? For the already fractured family barely holding itself together? Then his phone buzzed again. It was a video, sent anonymously. No message, no explanation. He opened it. What he saw made his breath stop. It was footage, grainy but clear, taken from a security camera, dated March 2020. It showed a high-level meeting room inside the palace. Around the table, 3 figures. William, a senior aide, and Camilla. The audio was patchy, but a few words cut through like knives. Discredit him before the public sympathy swings. Make it look like their choice, not ours. Get ahead of Meghan's media team. Harry dropped the phone. His world tilted. This wasn't strategy. This was sabotage. Planned, discussed, executed. And it wasn't just about the institution. It was about him. Him as a brother, a son, a father. The video lasted only 58 seconds. But it was enough to confirm everything he feared and everything Meghan had warned him about. This hadn't been miscommunication. It had been war. He grabbed the flash drive, and for the first time, He made a choice without hesitation. He called Meghan. "I'm releasing it," he said. Her pause was long, measured. "Are you sure?" He looked out the window of the apartment, at the city that once cheered for him, then turned its back. "Yes." But just as he was about to click send, a call came through. "Unknown number. UK code." He answered. "Harry, it's William." Silence. Then, William spoke words Harry never thought he'd hear. "I need to see you. Now." Harry's voice was ice. "Why?" "So you can lie to my face again." "No," William said, voice hoarse. "Because everything's about to spiral. And if you don't stop, you'll bring it all down." Harry said nothing. Then William dropped the line that stopped him cold. "There's something on that drive you don't understand." "What are you talking about?" "You'll see. But you need to hear it from me first." Harry hesitated. Every muscle in his body wanted to reject the offer. But something in William's voice. It wasn't anger. It was fear. And in that moment, Harry realized the truth. William wasn't in control anymore either. And if what William knew was worse than what Harry had already seen, then the crown was sitting on a secret so explosive, even the future king was terrified. Harry agreed to meet. But where that meeting would take place, and what William was about to reveal, would crack open the darkest secret in modern royal history. Where do you meet your brother when trust is gone, but the truth demands to be heard? Not the palace, not a royal chapel, not even a private estate. William chose an old hunting lodge on the edge of Windsor Great Park, remote, guarded, and far enough from press lenses and palace ears to guarantee total secrecy. A place their grandfather, Prince Philip, had once favored for private meetings. A place where things were said that never made it into court circulars. Harry arrived first. He didn't bring aides. No security. Just the flash drive in his coat pocket and a phone on airplane mode. The sky above was gray, heavy with the kind of winter clouds that seemed to weigh the world down. Inside the lodge, it smelled of aged timber and old leather chairs. The fire hadn't been lit. The air was cold. Still, William walked in exactly 4 minutes late. Harry didn't stand. William didn't offer a handshake. Just silence. Thick and choking. Then finally, William spoke. "You saw the video?" Harry nodded. "And the memo?" Harry pulled out the flash drive. Set it on the table between them. "I was ready to release it," he said. William didn't flinch. "Why didn't you?" "You said there's something I don't know." William stared at the drive, jaw tightening. Then he sat. "There's more," he said. "A lot more. Things not on that drive. Things that were never supposed to be documented." Harry's eyes narrowed. "What kind of things?" William looked up. "The deal." Those two words made Harry lean forward. "What deal?" "The one made after you left," William said. "Between Charles and Camilla." Harry frowned. "About what?" "About everything." Now we need to pause for a second, because what William was about to reveal had never been spoken publicly. Not by royal biographers. Not by press insiders. Not even in whispered leaks to favored journalists. This was the real reason Harry's titles were on the chopping block, and it had nothing to do with protocol. It had everything to do with optics. According to William, after the Sussexes left in early 2020, the monarchy entered full panic mode. Not just because of the headlines, but because the brand had become fractured. Public trust plummeted. Commonwealth nations began questioning the institution. And Charles, just months from ascending the throne, was desperate to stabilize his image. That's when Camilla stepped in. She proposed a containment strategy. A bold one. Radical. And ruthless. It included 3 key pillars. Redefine the working royals. Shrink the circle. Centralize power in the core group. Charles, Camilla, William, Kate. Discredit the defectors. Quietly but consistently. Through press leaks, public doubt, and strategic silence. Secure succession at any cost. No distractions. No scandals. No siblings undermining the future king. To make it happen, Camilla offered a deal. She would take the PR heat in the press, let herself become the narrative lightning rod. If Charles granted her more operational power within the firm. In other words, Camilla became the unofficial chief strategist of the crown. And in return, she made the Sussex issue her personal project. William wasn't told everything at first. He was looped in later, when the media tactics began working. When polls shifted. When the monarchy began to reclaim ground. But there was one clause in that internal deal William didn't know about until it was too late. And it was that clause that terrified him. Because it wasn't just about Harry. It was about the children, Archie and Lilibet. According to William, Camilla had quietly inserted a conditional provision into the internal legal language of the Royal Titles Review. It stated that if Harry's titles were rescinded under exceptional circumstances of public interest, the HRH styling and prince/princess designations for his children could be suspended indefinitely. Suspended, not revoked, just held in limbo. No status, no recognition, no royal rights. That was the real power play, because it gave the palace a bargaining chip, a silent one that could be activated or shelved depending on whether Harry and Meghan behaved. And William? He'd only found out about that clause 2 weeks ago, when the coronation papers were finalized. That's when he realized the machine had moved past him. He wasn't steering it anymore. He was just a figurehead, like Charles. The real influence was Camilla. Harry was speechless. You knew this and you still called me here? William looked tired. Not angry, just hollow. I didn't call you here to stop you, he said. I called you here to warn you. Harry's hands curled into fists. You let her weaponize my children. I didn't let her, William said. I didn't know. Harry stood up, pacing now, rage flashing in his eyes. You want me to believe the future King of England didn't know what deals his stepmother was cutting behind the throne? William's voice was cold. Do you know what it's like to be the heir and still be kept in the dark? Harry froze, because in that moment, he saw it. The trap wasn't for him. It was for both of them. Camilla had isolated them, dismantled their unity, set them on opposite sides of a war neither had truly started. And now she was winning. Unless. Harry turned. There's more on the drive, he said. I haven't opened all the files yet. William nodded. Don't. Not until you've seen what I have. He pulled a folder from his coat, placed it beside the flash drive. Inside, printed minutes from a private legal meeting held at Clarence House, dated 3 months after the Sussex exit, signed by 3 senior aides, and one name at the bottom, CRP, Camilla Rosemary Parker. Harry read the minutes. His stomach dropped, because in those pages was the blueprint of a strategy to erase the Sussex titles, quietly, legally, over time, without ever giving the appearance of revenge. The language was clinical, sanitized, reclassification of non-working titles under the guise of streamlining, gradual removal of HRH to mitigate brand confusion, retention of constitutional optics while reducing association with externalized royals. It was there, in black and white. They were never supposed to survive the exit. They were supposed to fade. But Meghan's success? The Netflix numbers? The memoir? The podcast deals? That had changed everything. So the strategy shifted, from quiet deletion to public execution. And now? Now the world was watching. Harry looked up. So what do we do? William looked grim. We stop her. How? By going public. Together. The idea was madness. The two brothers, so publicly estranged, now presenting a united front? The palace would implode. But maybe that was the point. Maybe this time, they write the script. Not Camilla. Not the institution. Them. Brothers. Sons. Fathers. They shook hands for the first time in years. No photographers. No palace statements. No forced smiles. Just one unspoken agreement. Expose the truth. But as they prepared their plan, Harry's phone buzzed again. Another anonymous video. He opened it, and what he saw made his blood run cold. It was footage from a private corridor inside Clarence House. Camilla, on the phone. And the words she said? If they go public, activate the Lilibet file. Harry's knees buckled, because whatever that file contained, it was personal. And it was next. What was the Lilibet file? That's the question that shattered Harry's composure the second he heard those words leave Camilla's lips in that grainy security video. If they go public, activate the Lilibet file. Not a file. Not the Sussex file. The Lilibet file. Named after his daughter. His little girl, just a toddler. Innocent. Untouched by this centuries-old institution she was born into. And now, being used as a pawn in a game she couldn't even pronounce. Harry's hands shook as he replayed the clip. Camilla was calm. Calculated. Her voice steady as stone. If they push forward, we push back. The Lilibet file is the trigger. The trigger. What kind of file gets called a trigger? Harry immediately forwarded the video to William. Within minutes, William was on the line. I've heard rumors, he said. But I never saw it. It's supposedly sealed. Sealed by who? Not who. What? The sovereign grant's internal archive. The stuff even I can't access without protocol. Harry's blood ran cold. He had to know. He had to see it. And that meant breaking through a level of royal secrecy even most monarchs rarely touched. Because if this file existed, if the monarchy had compiled anything on his daughter, it wasn't just cruel. It was criminal. Let's back up. To understand the danger here, you have to understand what the Lilibet file represented. Not just a document, not just a record, but a strategic safeguard. A blackmail file, built in the shadows, intended for use only if Harry and Meghan ever crossed a certain line. What was that line? Going public. Together. Against the crown. Which is exactly what they were now planning to do. So Camilla's order wasn't metaphorical. It was real. And the consequences? Could be catastrophic. Back in Montecito, Meghan was already bracing for the blow. She hadn't seen the video yet. But she had heard whispers. A rumor, years ago, from a disgruntled aide who once said, "They're collecting everything, even about the children." At the time, she thought it was just fear-mongering. Now, she wasn't so sure. Her phone rang. It was Harry. Breathless. Urgent. "They've got something." On Lilibet. Silence. Then Meghan's voice, steady as steel. "Then we make sure we see it first." And that's when Meghan did something she hadn't done in 3 years. She made a call to a palace insider. Someone she'd burned bridges with during the exit. Someone who had every reason to say no, but didn't. Why? Because this insider had a daughter of their own. And when Meghan said, "They've got a file on my child," that was enough. The insider didn't say much. Just one line. "Be in Geneva. Monday. Hotel de Bergs. 11 a.m. No phones." Why Geneva? Because the sovereign grant, despite being a British institution, housed some of its most sensitive, off-site assets through discreet international legal firms. It was a financial firewall, created under the guise of protection and non-disclosure continuity. But Meghan knew the real reason. It allowed the Crown to keep its dirtiest files away from UK legal exposure. They were about to meet the person who could unlock it all. Meanwhile, in London, William was quietly spiraling. The closer he got to the truth, the more he realized how little of the chessboard he'd actually been controlling. And now, Camilla had gone full Machiavellian. That same afternoon, she issued a public engagement announcement, a new royal literacy campaign focused on protecting the innocence of children in the digital age. Subtle? Not even a little. It was a shot across the bow. A warning. Mention Lilibet, and we go public first. The press didn't catch it, but Harry and Meghan did. And the message was crystal clear. They wouldn't just destroy your titles. They'd poison your children's legacy. Back in Geneva, Meghan arrived first. Alone. She didn't bring lawyers. No assistants. Not even security. Just a notebook and a pen. The insider met her in a private conference room overlooking the lake. They didn't shake hands. The insider simply handed her a folder. Thick. Stamped. Confidential. L. Diana Mountbatten Windsor. Meghan opened it. What she found made her stomach turn. The file contained surveillance reports, compiled by private contractors hired through a secondary firm. It included media profiles, speculative personality assessments based on bloodline behavior. Yes, really, and even early-stage psychological risk projections. All for a child under 3. One page included an analysis of potential optical liabilities should Lilibet grow up primarily in America, outside royal influence. Another reference to contingency proposal. Reframing her lineage to align with Windsor legacy, should the Sussexes become non-viable entities. Non-viable entities. They were talking about her daughter. Not as family, not even as a person, as an asset, a liability, a threat. And the worst part? The final page. A signature line. Approved, CRP. Camilla Rosemary Parker. Meghan felt the blood drain from her face. There it was. Undeniable. Proof that Camilla had orchestrated an active intelligence strategy not just against Meghan and Harry, but against their child. Meghan snapped a photo of the final page with her burner phone. She didn't speak a word, just nodded, closed the folder, and left. When she called Harry, her voice didn't shake. She was done crying. "Release the video," she said. "Release the drive. Release everything." Harry hesitated. What if they come after us harder? They already did. That night, Harry uploaded the security video to an encrypted platform used by investigative journalists. Alongside it, he attached key documents from the flash drive, sanitized for personal data, but damning enough to paint a clear picture. The coordinated media leaks, the memo to discredit them, Camilla's strategic notes. It was all there. He didn't send it anonymously. He signed his name. From Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex. For my daughter. For my mother. And then, the waiting began. 12 hours later, The Guardian, The New York Times, and Le Monde simultaneously